Appreciate it. Josh Pate joining us from Late Kick, one of the most successful podcasts on college football in America. Josh, it's great to see you again. And this guy just didn't like NIL, and he said, why do we have to do it? I guess I tried to answer as nicely as I can, but I don't think the football program would last too long if they decided to say, we really think you're getting enough.
I've been running into this all week. So you realize folks like us are just in the weeds, and we're reading every update from the Dellingers and the Thamels out there, and then you realize there is an entire world of people, like 99% of people who actually love this sport. They're out there working 9-to-5 jobs. They don't keep up with all of it, and they just have basic frustrations like that. And so, you have to go back to square one. You got to go back to chapter 1 of the book and remind folks it may not be ideal, but this is why it has to be the way it is right now. But man, like, what a week you've probably had on this show, and what a week we've had in the entire world of trying to make sense of all this, and then trying to figure out, okay, well, what is actually in the best interest of the sport, and also, and this is something we could probably spend the rest of the day on, the decision makers in the room. Do they even care about the same things I care about? Do they care about the same things you care about? And, man, I don't know if you've had an easy answer for that. I hadn't had an easy answer for that.
There really isn't. We had a gentleman on a few minutes ago who's a prominent businessman, Gordon Whitener, and he's in the middle of all this, and he said, we have to do something now. And I agree with him, but we're not doing anything about it right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there's any way to undo it because of the ineptitude and the arrogance of the NCAA for too long.
I'll tell you what's tough is, I listened to Nick Saban when he went up on Capitol Hill. I've listened to a lot of administrative types and coaching types in college football. And honestly, Paul, I've thought they've made some really good points, but probably in a too little too late kind of fashion. Number one, because action wasn't taken several years ago, okay? And that's what you're talking about. But also, as much as I have my own ideas and you have your own ideas of what a perfect college football world looks like, and maybe some of these guys are articulating things along those lines, the other side of the fence, where there are detractors who argue against that and argue that, hey, the way we're going is the way it should go, they're not making bad points when they say, these folks in the coaching world are chasing every dollar. These folks are mercenaries. They don't care about tradition. They don't care about the integrity of this or that. They don't care about stability. Conferences are chasing every dollar they can. They don't care about stability, so why should the players? And when I've been met with that argument, I've just kind of had to cede it and lean back and say, you make a decent point. I still stand by what I'm saying, but if you're saying it sounds hypocritical for those groups to be the ones calling it out, I can immediately push back on that.
What's also interesting, Josh, we had Commissioner Sankey on a few minutes ago, and he's literally at the table of all these conversations. But he also said that the fans care about the games, and I know there's a dichotomy there. But I mean, these people in this arena, the people that you run into on Saturdays when you're out every single week, they may hate what they see on Monday through Friday, but they love the games.
It's what I've had the toughest time with. So ratings are big right now. Viewership's big right now. Interest in the game is really big right now. My theory on what is great about college football is spirit. I think that's what's great about college football. I think the biggest selling point of our sport is not that there is superior athleticism on the field to what you would see the next day on Sunday. It's the spirit, and you can define that however you want to. I worry, not in the short term, that viewership's going to wane, because audience patterns, as you well know, are always well downstream of decisions that get made, sometimes years downstream. What I worry about is if you're sacrificing what the public at large would define as the spirit of college football, is there a tipping point? Does the seesaw start to swing to where you see mass groups of people do what they did with pro wrestling, do what they did with NASCAR?
Right.
Is college football immune to that? Because there's been no other form of entertainment in the history of this world that's been immune to that. I think it would be very short-sighted to think college football is immune to that. That would be my biggest concern. I don't know when that happens. I don't know what the tipping point is.
Well, what's interesting about NASCAR, and I used to cover it, is that the old guard was turned off by where it was going, and I don't know if they came back. Now, college football is a little bit different, because it's one thing if you're a Dale Jr. fan or a senior fan or anyone. That college football, you're tied to your school, yeah. and the players are always going to change.
Hold on. I know it's unprofessional to just sit here in silence, but I gather thoughts a lot, because I have a lot of things that we have broached today and we've broached in the past year where I definitely see both sides of an argument. Portal's been that way, NIL's been that way. The overall 50,000-foot trajectory of the game has been that way. Because the other thing that I've tried to guard against is just demonizing all the conference commissioners and university presidents, because I am not blind to the fact that there are things like House versus NCAA out there that will not be a ripple. It will be a tsunami in the world of college athletics, whether there's a settlement or whether that thing goes all the way through trial. And I know someone may be on the hook for a whole heck of a lot of money. More than you and I have ever seen in our lifetimes. It ends with a B, like not an M. And so, you know, I understand. I'm not again, not blind to the fact that when you're sitting in that negotiating room, if you're Tony Pate, if you're Greg Sankey, there are a million things on the table in front of you. That doesn't change the fact that holistically, if I'm just a college football fan, I can be understanding of that and still displeased that it ever got to this point, I guess.
We're talking to Josh Pate. I want to take a break because I'm going to do something that you will not like. I want to talk about you.
Right.
Because I am, you know what a big fan I am of yours. I've talked to you off the air about how you've been able to do it. And I think it's one of the more intriguing stories in media because our guest here literally, I mean, it was, you had nothing going for you, right?
I was down in Columbus, Georgia, listening to the Paul Finebaum show on internet radio on WJOX. That's what I was doing.
But, and you were able to show perseverance, to believe in yourself, bet on yourself. It's a cliche, but it's actually a pretty safe thing that we talk about a lot. I want to talk about Josh Pate, how he ended up going from what you just got through describing, you know, almost you know, being beyond rock bottom, I think, and becoming one of the people that matter in this college football platform. We'll take a short break. We are live in Nashville. And welcome back. We are here in Nashville talking to Josh Pate. So Josh, okay, let's talk about the Josh Pate story. You're in Columbus, Georgia, doing what?
Man, what year you want to go to? We can go back to graduating high school, working in a fabric warehouse, a couple of semesters at Columbus State University. There's several prologues to that Josh Pate story, but I'll tell you where it kind of gets interesting is always loved college football now, and always had like a strange fascination with your world. Like I always had a strange fascination with the broadcast side of sports media. Now, I thought I could do it, but everyone thinks they can do it, and so I had no training. I had no relatives in the business. And honestly, Paul, when I left high school, I was one of those tweener kind of kids that certainly didn't grow up rich by any stretch, but it didn't grow up dirt poor and therefore understanding, man, I'm the only shot my family has. And so go to college, don't really know what I want to do, and so I know I'm wasting money. I do know that. So I leave. I didn't call it dropping out. I intended to go back, but worked in a worked some construction down there, but worked in a fabric warehouse for a little while down in Columbus, and would listen to morning talk, would listen to local afternoon drive, would listen to you in the evening, and just realized I'm not 18 anymore now. We're talking about mid-20s. We're getting towards late 20s. After that comes 30s, and then it's come to 80s. You just go right to the 80s. And I would just badger the program director down there at the local ESPN radio affiliate. Could I please come in and watch? I've never seen live production in my life in person. And Bobby Roblowski was his name. He was a big-time FM DJ back in the day. He's working Sports Talk in Columbus at the time and lets me in there 2 months in. His co-host called in sick really last minute. So he just tossed me on air. And it's afternoon drive, and it's caller-based. It's formulated loosely after a show that was emanating out of Birmingham, Alabama at the time that you've probably heard of. And I loved it so much, man. It was so authentic. It was so real. It was the middle of college football season in the South. And they never took me off air. Loved it enough and kind of found my sea legs enough to where they never took me off air. And a couple of years later, a television general manager by the name of Drew Rhodes hit me up from the NBC affiliate and said, hey, I listen to you every day. You've never heard of me. I listen to you every day. And we'd love to do something over here that is a television version of what you already do. Would you be interested? And started doing it over there and became a sports anchor, became a regular news anchor over there. But I knew, man, around the 20-teens, like the mid-20 teens, when those social platforms like YouTube and Facebook, when they started adding live mechanisms, it was like a multiple Berlin Wall moment for people like me. because overhead and distribution were the barriers to that point.
Right.
that made sure, man, I probably have very little shot in that business. But all of a sudden, when overhead and distribution is in your hand, then if you're ready to bet on yourself and you're any good at what you do, the market's going to let you know, and the market will react. And the market reacted, and I realized local news anchoring is not what I want to be doing. I want to be doing a version of what some of these guys do. And so we started a national show. We were just doing it out of Columbus, Georgia, and they didn't like it, nor should they, because it was on their time and on their dime. But I got to the end of that contract and negotiated to work 1099 for them. I remain their news anchor, but since I'm not employed there anymore, it's okay. And I asked him, can I just get this studio 3 nights a week? I want to do a YouTube channel. You guys probably don't even know what that is at that time, but I'm going to do a YouTube channel. I want to do my own show. And we did it, and it scaled pretty quick. And LSU in 2019 really helped me. LSU in that run in 2019 really helped, and we got traction outside of the Columbus market for the first time. And it wasn't too long after that that Shannon Terry, who is now over at On3, but was at the time at 24/7 and CBS, called me up and said, we don't even have anything like you're doing. Would you just move to Nashville and do that here? And I said, absolutely, and came here, and COVID set in immediately after that.
Wow.
But you'll remember, during that time, there was like a great divide in sports media of some people who just stuck in the lane they hang out in, and then other folks got out of that lane. And the side effect of that was it alienated some audience. And what we found in our audience traffic numbers is they came to us, because I wasn't about to talk about infectious disease on air. I was never going to do that.
Thank you.
And we just talked about college football. It's a crazy business proposition, but we did it, and the thing is scaled probably beyond my wildest dreams. And we've had full support and buy-in from the folks over at CBS and 24/7, and I know how rare a commodity that is. And I think probably what I take the most pride in is because we've proven to be a successful product, I know other folks are going to get an opportunity now at multiple different places to do it this way, to do it on the digital media side. And it's been fun, man. It's been a load of fun, and when you have that wind in your sails finally, it is I mean, it's unlimited what you can do with it.
Josh, it's one thing to do a show on YouTube. It's another thing to do what you're doing. I mean, I saw the other day you were down in Georgia talking to Kirby Smart. I mean, you talk to pretty much everybody who is anybody in the lane. And what is it because of?
Well, I'd let those guys speak for it. I know the feedback we get from coaches and the feedback on and off the record that I get from coaches is guys just appreciate when you're real. Okay. You don't have to carry water for them. I have an appreciation and respect for what they do, mainly the unseen parts of what they do and deal with. But if you're moving the needle audience-wise and you're real, I have not gotten a ton of pushback when we criticize coaches. Now, I'll have guys sometimes that'll hit us up and say, here's what I don't think you're seeing on this. But it's always, we appreciate you being fair about it. Let us know if you need anything. And so, we're about to go on a spring tour here where, Paul, I'll probably hit 10 to 15 different campuses, and we'll do some live shows on the road with Late Kick. But also, just as you know, it's invaluable getting that one-on-one time with head coaches and coordinators and ADs this time of year, because that has been so invaluable in helping me understand beneath the surface what's going on in the world of college football, not just the sport of college football. Because
one thing about these coaches, I mean, they do not spend a lot of time doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm really, forget where I work. I mean, this is part of it's part of the process. But I don't see them doing what they're doing with you with anyone else.
I think there's a respect factor there. And I think guys are way more guarded today. Everyone's scared of saying the wrong thing. And I think if you've gained their trust, if you gain a coach's trust, and they understand that the guy's not coming down here to back me into a corner, okay, that's one thing. I mean, 10 times better than I do what it feels like when a guest is at ease with you. I'm at ease with you right now. Imagine having head coaches like that around you. But also, they understand from a recruiting standpoint. We've got a massive 18 to 34-year-old demographic on my show. I mean, young people are watching the show. The messaging gets out. So there is certainly a self-focused aspect of that. But look, some of these guys get demonized. I mean, I think by and large, most of them want what's best for the game. There may be some selfish interest there as well, but they want what's best for the game. I certainly want that. I mean, I grew up loving this. I cannot imagine having to work a normal job. I mean, when you get paid to talk about college football, that's as good as it gets if you love what I love. But I think a lot of those guys feel the same way. And I think if you can get them to trust you and get them relaxed and understand, hey, not every question has sharp, pointy spears at both ends of it, they're happy to work with you.
Finally, on that part of the industry, because I mean, we're on linear television here. It's everyone is so used to doing what they've always done, but you know it better than I do, or anyone. I mean, there's so much money being made in the space you're in. Explain that to the rest of us lay people.
Well, I did not understand that dynamic. Probably I've learned more in the last 2 years about that than I knew in my entire life combined. I'll tell you, Shannon Terry did a really, really good job of kind of coaching me when I first got to 24/7.
And Shannon Terry, who we have talked to here before, he is, I mean, nobody has done what he has done in the industry. I mean, he's done it now at his third place.
And so you try and gravitate towards people like that. They've forgotten more than you know about what we're talking about. But I'll tell you, dealing with third-party ad agencies, dealing with major clients. Academy Sports and Outdoors is really big at the SEC tournament. They have been my presenting sponsor on Late Kick for a while, full disclosure. To deal with those folks and to understand, hey, there's a forward-thinking nature in this sales department, and to understand that they have their eyeballs everywhere and they're watching audience trends and patterns, then, Paul, it's just up to you to put a good product out there. I mean, the first thing you've got to do, as a former news director of mine once told me, build your tribe. You build that tribe, then a lot of that stuff becomes rudimentary and fundamental, but there's been a little paradigm shift in where the money goes in this industry. I think it pales in comparison to where it'll be 5 years from now.
Right. So looking in the crystal ball, which we do every day, what do you think it will look like based on everything you know and everything you have lived through and experienced?
I think the tail will wag the dog at that point in terms of where the juice is. In this particular sector, I'm not about to sit here and try and explain things outside of the sports media industry, because I barely explain them inside the sports media industry, but the data that we get is incontrovertible on where people are going, where viewership is going. It's not just the 18 to 34. I mean, the 34 to 65 is not an official Nielsen tracked metric, but it's one that we follow really closely.
Right.
Paul, they haven't left legacy, but they are alternately viewing different ways than they would have even 5 years ago. It's really crazy to look at some of the graphing and some of the trafficking. At the end of the day, as the knowledge of how to work platforms is more readily saturated into the viewership market, people will find the content they want to find where it is. It has to be visible, it has to be well supported and well produced, and thankfully we are blessed to be that with the CBS backing that we have. But I think another 5 years, I mean, you can look over at ESPN right now, and you can look at what some guys, some very prominent names are doing, not just on the legacy platforms, but on the alternate and on the digital. Right now, you still view those as alternate. I don't think 5 years from now we're viewing those as alternate. I think those televisions still in homes, but by and large, you're going here, and if that's where if what I want's there, then I don't need to go anywhere else. And I think that's where the big names will be.
No, it's amazing, because when I talk to college kids every weekend on a campus, I mean, you ask them anecdotally, like, well, what do you watch? And they say, we don't watch. I'm talking about conventional television.
I'll tell you the other thing. It's a whole nother diatribe, but the concept of how competition works in this space is so misconstrued. There was once upon a time, you lived in this world where it was a time slot world.
Right.
There was no on demand. And if you had a 3 to 7 and I had a 3 to 7, we are fighting to the death for every listener, because there is no podcast replay, there's no on demand, there's no DVR, there's nothing. They got to catch you live or they don't catch you. You fast forward 30 years, and most of my audience watches the replay of the show. They don't even catch the show live. It is built to be at their convenience that night, but also the next morning. And so the point is that Paul Finebaum and Josh Pate are on at the same time. They'll watch you live, they'll watch me replay, or vice versa. But the high tide that you see raise all boats indicates that your competition's not the other guy with the microphone. The competition may be pulling the audience over to where you are in mass, and also just competing against the standard. Some of the same stuff we heard Saban say for 20 years at Alabama, the same mentality you should have when you're trying to build and sustain content in our space.
Josh Pate, incredible. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we were able to dig deep.
I appreciate you having me.
It is such a pleasure. We'll take a short break. We still have a long way to go here. We're live in Nashville. We're right back after this.